We finally got to the end of session 16. It's been a long one, so this is part 4 and we're done with this. Today we're going to talk about synchronicities, life in 4 density and their conditions there, and also daydreaming. Let's start. The content that we're going to start with in this video is part of the book 5 that came out in the 90s after the original 4 books came out. And it's all personal stuff. Now, I try not to include some of the personal stuff that they ask just because some of it I don't find it relevant for the study of the law of one. But this one in particular is about synchronicities. So I think that's a topic, if you are like me, who a lot of people are very interested. So like I said, I wanted to include it here just to start up this conversation because I find it fascinating because there is a connection between the metaphysical and the physical reality and how it happens. And I want to tell you a little bit more about my experience with synchronicities, and hopefully you can share yours with me because I always love to hear about them. But I have some things that I want to mention as well, which I think are pretty practical for people understanding synchronicities by my experience and of course other people and what I've known. So without further ado, let's start with the first question that Don says. And he says, can you tell me of the silver flecks that we have found sometimes on our faces or elsewhere? And Ross says, these of which you speak are a materialization of a subjectively oriented signpost indicating to one mind-body-spirit complex and no other a meaning of subjective nature. Don says, who creates the silver flecks? Are they real? Ross says, picture, if you will, the increasing potential for learned teaching. At some point, a sign will be given to indicate the appropriateness or importance of that learned teaching. The entity itself, in cooperation with the inner planes, creates whatever signpost is most understandable or noticeable to it. Don asks, you are saying that we ourselves then create these. Ra explains, entities consciously do not create these. The roots of mind complex, having touch in understanding intelligent infinity, create them. And I would say first, it's very important that Ra says that these are for no other than the person that gets the synchronicity. This is crucial because if you have seen synchronicities in your life, you would know that the impact, the emotion that you get from a synchronicity is not the same as when you tell somebody. Even if that person, like in my case, could be Julie, who shares with me so much stuff, she would never get the emotion that I got from knowing this. Even if she knows everything about it, everything about me and my process and whatnot, it really is meant for you to fully understand it and get the message. So synchronicities in general are just like Ross says, and I love that they put it this way. They are kind of like signs that you get in our reality here that you can see and you can interpret yourself based on what you were thinking. Now, synchronicities can come in so many ways. For me, they usually come with numbers because that's what I'm fascinated with. Always, since I was a kid, I've had a fascination with numbers and mathematics in general. So to me, it often shows in that way. Not all the time. Sometimes it's the usual telepathy that happens, when you're thinking about somebody and just, somebody texts you or calls you or, just things like that. I mean, there are so many types of synchronicities and, the crucial point is being that. Now, what Ra explains is that it's actually ourselves who create them in a way, but not our physical self, but rather our higher self sort of kind of, it's what I get, that in combination with our own experience because of what we're doing touches, intelligent infinity, which is actually what causes the synchronicity as a signpost to tell us that we're on the right path. And I'll give you one example of what happened to me about a year ago. It's been a little bit more than a year. But I was offered a job at the time where I was working as a personal trainer, and I was just making very minimal wage, and I really needed the money, and I was offered over 3 times the amount that I was making, and that would have solved my my economic problems for sure. But because I was so geared towards this path at that time, when I wanted to make content like this and other stuff, I was basically going to give up this type of work that I'm doing now for that, just to have financial security. But I was conflicted about it, and without getting into the details, I got showered with synchronicities that day that were basically telling me all the time, you're making the right decision by rejecting the offer. This happened in a way, like I said, I probably describe it in another video or somewhere else, because it was fascinating the way it happened. But it was constantly, the whole day. Every time I would think about something, I would get a synchronicity. Basically, just, it was like an alarm sign telling me, you know, don't take it. Just keep going with what you're doing. And I tell you, I was going to do it for the money, not actually for the job. And I am so much better, you know, doing this kind of stuff right now, which makes me feel even more satisfied. So anyhow, we've taken a lot of time just talking about synchronicities. To me, they're fascinating. If they are for you, leave me a comment. Tell me if you had any sort of synchronicity, because I love to hear about it. Even if I don't understand, like I said, you know, what it really means to you, but I love hearing about it. So let's go on with the rest of the session and the next questions that we have. Thank you. Is it possible for you to give a small description of the conditions in fourth density? Process. We ask you to consider, as we speak, that there are no words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what is not and approximate what is. Beyond fourth density, our ability grows more limited still until we become without words. That which fourth density is not. It is not of words, unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. It is not of this harmony within self. It is not of this harmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause this harmony in any way. Okay, I'm gonna make pauses as we go through this so I can give you my impression of what this means and what I know about fourth density. So the first thing is that it is not of words unless chosen. Words are meaningless in a way that we have telepathy. And words are a very rudimentary way of communicating. So that's, you know, pretty simple. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities, which means that our bodies are not this dense in the sense that there is a very compact chemical vehicle that we inhabit here. It's a lighter body, let's put it that way, for just regular activities. Or for what it says, body complex activities is the physical activities. Remember, in fourth density, there's a lot of thought activity, which is just us moving into communication and using thought forms as, again, as a way of interacting and communicating not only with other people in the environment, but also the cosmos in general. So that's a big one there. It is not of this harmony within self. We are pretty much harmonized there. It is not this harmony within people, and it is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way, because we are basically in a state of harmony, complete harmony. I'm sure there are some, you know, disharmonies here and there that we're gonna see, that I infer from the content here, but hope that makes sense. Let's go on with the next part. It says, approximations of positive statements. It is a plane of a type of bipedal vehicle which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thoughts of other selves. It is a plane where one is aware of the vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. Okay, so here, simple. It is a plane of type of bipedal vehicle, which is more denser than full of life. In the sense of density, they are talking about just light and love and understanding and everything that makes actually the body complex that I understand seems to be in fourth density. It's bipedal because we still have a physical body that moves just like we move here, but it's lighter and it's taller. I've heard, and that's basically, you know, the type of body that we have. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thoughts of other selves. This we know, we've talked about, that it's very clear, crystal clear who we are and what we are for the social complex that we form. And as we progress to the social memory complex, we need to be transparent with each other. It's just the way it is. It's almost like seeing the physical body of somebody else when you are talking to them here in third density. They cannot just, you know, disappear or be invisible. You have to see them. So that's a prerequisite, let's put it that way, of fourth density. It's a plane of compassion and understanding. This is something that we know about third density. We are very compassionate and loving and understanding of the people in third density, of course. That's why there's a lot of healing happening to the entities that graduate to fourth density. This is just my understanding, that when they get to fourth density, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen that comes from third density. So that's what I get from that. And it is a plane striving towards wisdom or light because we are moving to fifth density. So just like here, we're moving or seeking, you know, love and understanding, which is part of fourth density. In fourth density, we're seeking light and wisdom, which is part of fifth density. So we have that consciousness. And this is a good question that people ask me about 5D, because there's a lot of, I said 5 with a 4. 5D, I'm good with numbers. I said that, right? So 5D is a misconception, but it's a good there's a reason why I say 4, because that's the misconception. The ascension process is to 4D, 4 density, as we know it in the law of one. But there's a pop culture coming out a lot, and I see it, you know, within fairly, I would say, knowledgeable people that talk about 5D, the 5D awakening and the 5D consciousness and all this stuff. To me, the misconception is not on the people talking about 5D itself, mostly about the understanding that 4D needs a 5D consciousness, just like 3D here needs a 4D consciousness to go, you know, to go about our business. We're not supposed to get stuck in third density consciousness. That's the idea. We need to progress into a fourth density. So that's why for me it says that it's a plane striving towards wisdom or light, which is fifth density. I hope to clarify that, because I get that question a lot. Is it 5D or 4D that we're moving towards? And that's my explanation. I think it means both. We're going to 4D physical or experiential, but we're going to harvest and collect 5D consciousness, or simply grow that 5D consciousness. Anyhow, that's it. And although automatically harmonized, this is the last part that I wanted to get into, where it says it is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced. So there are differences between us. It's just that we automatically harmonize it by group consensus. Remember, if we have a clear vision of who the person is and there is a difference within them, then we harmonize it because we understand that entity. And there is simply no way to disharmonize this plane of existence. Hope that makes sense. I love talking about 4D, and if it doesn't, just again leave me a comment there and we'll talk about it. Next question is, could you define the word density, as we have been using it to give us a little greater idea of the concept of this term when used by you? Ross says, the term density is what you would call mathematical one. The closest analogy is that of music, whereby after 7 notes on your Western type of scale, if you will, the 8th note begins a new octave. Within your great octave of existence, which we share with you, there are 7 octaves or densities. Within each density, there are 7 subdensities. Within each subdensity, 7 sub-subdensities, and so on indefinitely. Or infinitely, rather. This, we've talked about, is the densities of consciousness. We know that the universe has 7 densities of consciousness where we move through for experiences. Now, one thing I want to clarify here, because for people understanding this, they think it's a hierarchical system, and it's not. It's just different layers where you can go. There is no higher, which means more. And this is a huge problem that we get here in third density when trying to understand higher density beings. Higher density or higher dimensional beings doesn't really mean that they're more than us. They are the same as we are. And this is something that obviously those positively oriented entities want to tell us. They want to basically tell us, like, easy, you know, like, we are the same. Don't consider us as gods. But our primitive nature, of course, in third density, through or because of the veil that we have, or between metaphysical and physical planes, then we tend to regard them as gods. That's why positive entities barely have touched this earth in ways that can break free will if the social complex, the civilization is it's sensitive to see other entities who have powers or other powers as gods. So that's a big one. Anyhow, so in those densities that we move through, those are the densities of consciousness that we have. But within those densities, so say third density here, there are 7 sub-densities. We know this 7 sub-densities because they relate to the 7 energy centers or chakras as we know them, because those are the 7 sub-densities. We inhabit those 7 sub-densities of third density. Within each sub-density, there are 7 sub-densities. So within the heart chakra and the root chakra and the throat chakra, there are 7 sub-densities. And then there's 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, all the way infinitely. And that's what it means. We're going to get a little bit into what this means in at the end of the video, where we talk about the astral planes and stuff like that. So let's go on. Don asks, I understand that each density has 7 sub-densities, which again have 7 sub-densities, and so on. This is expanding at a really large rate as each is increased by powers of 7. Does this mean that in any density level, anything that you can think of is happening? Ross says, from your confusion, we select the concept with which you struggle, that being infinite opportunity. You may consider any possibility-probability complex as having an existence. Okay, so this is just on the idea that on each density, there is some sort of experience happening. And because it's infinite, this is what I gather from what Ross says and the question Don asked, which is kind of confusing. It's a little, mind twisting, that everything is happening in just one density. But that's just the nature of infinity. I really don't know how to delve deeper into that, but other than knowing that everything is happening at the same time everywhere in the universe. It's just we are collapsing that wave function, as you would call it, in quantum physics, to create the reality that we're living right now. So it's kind of like an illusion within the infinity or the infinite amount of possibilities. And that's why this experience is so cool, because we live in a third density or even fourth and fifth. We're interacting in those where our creators, us being the creators, of course, or an iteration of it. Anyhow, I know this is mind twisting. It is for me. And I also made a notation there because of the length of the session. Don actually asked in question 52 if Carla was fine, asking about the instrument. It was a very long session, as you can see. So that was the question. I didn't include it here. And question 53 was that. So we can move on to the next. We have a lot to cover still. So there you go. Don asks, does what we do when we think of possibilities that occur, say daydreaming, do these become real in these densities? The question is poorly written, I think. Ra says, this depends upon the nature of daydreaming. This is a large subject. Perhaps the simplest thing we can say is that the daydream, as you call it, is one which attracts to self. This then becomes reality to self. If it is contemplative general daydream, this may enter the infinity of possibility-probability complexes and occur elsewhere, having no particular attachment to the energy fields of the creator. Don asks, to make this a little more clear, if I were to daydream strongly about building a ship, would this occur in one of these other densities? Ra says, this would have or shall occur. Don continues, And then if, say, an entity daydreams strongly about battling, let us say, another entity, would this occur? Ross says, in this case, the entity's fantasy concerns the self and other self. This binds the thought form to the possibility-probability complex connected with the self, which is the creator of this thought form. This then would increase the possibility-probability of bringing this into third density occurrence. Now, this makes sense as Don is asking about the infinite possibilities and how we think, because when we think, we create thought forms and we feed them, we kind of empower them. So the first question was about asking, how does this, happen? Or the first couple of questions was about how it happens. And Ross says basically, if you create a thought that is just a random contemplation, then it's just, let's say, an independent creation. It just goes out into the, I would say, the box of possibility probabilities that Ross says that may happen, because they are not attached to space-time, for my understanding. They kind of exist in time-space, which is just the possibility of happening, and then it's there. And because that's why it says it would have or had happened in the past, because they're talking about time in general. Your thoughts can affect time, maybe not the time that we live here, this timeline, but other timelines. So that's why it's very important to have, some sort of consciousness about our ability of creating these realities. Very important. This also attaches to people who are creative and that write, say, books or plays or some sort of just visualization of a creation in general. Like we know, if you're a nerd like me, of course, of the Lord of the Rings and, other epic fantasies. To me, they're universes that have been created, and they exist somewhere in the universe, in the different planes of existence. So really cool to know that. But the other thing is, when you are in the thought created, in the reality that you're creating in your mind, then that means that you are attached to that, which means that the possibility of that happening somehow, and it's not just what you thought, is also very likely. But now you're attached to it. The fact that you think about other people not necessarily means that you're going to attach that person to you. It might, but it doesn't necessarily happen. So say, in this case, if it's say you have a negative thought about somebody, and you have a sort of argument with that person, that energy that you're creating, that argument, that problem that you are dealing with in that imagination may happen to you, very likely. This goes into the law of attraction and a lot of stuff, which I don't want to get into because I don't want to make the video too long, but it also makes sense in this line of thinking, that when you think about something and have emotions attached to it, then you are creating basically the structure by which you will manifest that reality. Now, just to leave this here, it is easier, and it's basically just our purpose to manifest the reality that we came here programmed to have because of our higher self. Because of our free will, of course, we can create different realities and manifest things in our lives. Sure, we have that power, but it's much easier to create the one reality that we came here to experience, and of course to contribute at this time and space. So very important to, when you manifest something, or when you're trying to manifest here anything about your life that you want, be open, be an allowance to just receive something that you need rather than what you want. This goes into plant medicine, psychedelics in general, that again, I think it's completely out of the topic that we're discussing here, but just want to leave that little piece of information that I've been seeing in myself and other people. So just in the concept of manifestation, it's important to keep that in mind. So be careful what you wish for, I guess. Let's go on. Don asks, does the Orion Group use this principle to create conditions brought about to suit their purpose? Ross says, we will answer more specifically than the question. The Orion group uses daydreams of hostile or other negative vibratory natures to feedback or strengthen these thought forms. Of course, the Orion group, as like I said before, positive entities or higher dimensional entities, positive ones, they want to avoid that interaction and breaking free will with us, where negative ones, they don't care. They do it as much as they can, as long as they don't lose polarization. That's what they're scared about, of course. But in this context, of course, the Orion group is going to use daydreaming to enhance and create more disturbance into the negativity of their thought forms, because they actually use them as well. And this is something that becomes obvious as we go on and understand the astral planes and all this stuff. So let's go on. Don says, do they ever use any, shall I say, gratifications of the physical body to amplify such daydreams? Ross says, they are able to do this only when there is a strong ability on the part of the receiving mind-body-spirit complex towards the perception of thought forms. This could be termed an unusual characteristic, but has indeed been a method used by Orion entities. So really quick here, what comes to mind is that the Orion group uses more this tool or this ability on people who are very sensitive to creating and strengthening thought forms. Now, I can just give you an example. I am probably not the best at this, and this is maybe self-judgment, because I'm not really good at imagining and creating and visualizing and experiencing from my own imagination, things like that. Whereas Julie actually is very powerful. She is very intuitive and has a lot this, and she has had actually psychic attacks with these thought forms that have been manifested here, and they had leached her energy in ways that go beyond, what we're talking about in this video. But just to reinforce that point, it's very important to know that people who are sensitive are very prone to attacks by the Orion group psychically to reinforce thought forms that are negative. And so if you are such person, I would advise you to try to transmute these thoughts, because they're not coming from you. They're coming from the environment that we have in the Orion group, and also lower astral plane entities that are also reinforcing this. And it's not the best for us, of course, and that's not what we want. So just keep that in mind if you are an intuitive and empathic and very sensitive person when it comes to this. Don continues and it says, the many wanderers coming to this planet now and in the recent past, are they subject to Orion thoughts? Ra explains, as we have said before, wanderers become completely the creature of third density in mind-body complex. There is just as much chance of such influence to a wanderer entity as to a mind-body-spirit complex of this planetary sphere. The only difference occurs in the spirit complex, which, if it wishes, has an armor of light, if you will, which enables it to recognize more clearly that which is not as it would appropriately be desired by the mind-body-spirit complex. This is not more than a bias and cannot be called an understanding. Alright, this is going to be one of the last ones, so we're going to go really deep into it, but I want to make some clarifications here, or just my interpretation of what I read. So, wanderers simply become as humanly possible. The only difference is in the spirit, because the spirit comes from elsewhere, and as a wanderer is, of course. And those recollections of memory within the roots of the mind, they kind of have an interaction with, or more like a reflection. It's not as, this is more than a bias and cannot be called understanding, because wanderers do not come with an understanding of it, more of a bias. They are polarized, say, towards the positive, so they are a little bit more prone to be, rejected, or not rejected, but reject negativity, or reject things that otherwise would look wrong to them in the sense of their polarization, their past experience and stuff like that. They are more reactive in that sense, and that's what it means here. So that's what it means, by the rest of the half of the answer. It's just that wanderers are more sensitive in that regard. So it's a cool point to go into. Not that long actually, but Ra continues and says, furthermore, the wanderer is, in its own mind-body-spirit complex, less distorted towards the, shall we say, deviousness of third density, positive-negative confusions. Thus, it often does not recognize as easily as a more negative individual the negative nature of thoughts or beings. And this is what I was saying. I feel like the wanderer is a little bit more naive into the negativity, say, projected by the Orion group in this case, as it would be somebody native here who is already accustomed by the memory complex that hasn't really, materialized yet, but is part of the social roots of the mind that is the planetary sphere. So say it's like a database that we have here on planet Earth, and we are a little bit more associated with the things that happen here in the Orion group and so on. Whereas a wanderer that comes here is a little bit more naive onto the mechanisms that we have here on planet Earth. This is why wanderers are so sensitive. This is why wanderers are so vulnerable, and they often are rejected, outcasts, rebels, and they just feel like they don't fit here. That is the reason why, because they come from a different planet, and that association with this planet becomes like very, very hostile. Not to mention that planet Earth is like it really is like an asylum. We have so many different entities from other planets who are repeating third density. We have people from Maldek, from Mars. I mean, it really is chaotic here, but that makes the beauty of planet Earth. I choose to love it as opposed to be scared about it. So there's just so much beauty in there. But again, I have extended more than I should have, and let's go on with the next and last questions, where Don says, would then the wanderers, as they incarnate here, be high priority targets, shall we say, of the Orion group? I think we all know the answer. This is correct. And then Don asks, and if a wanderer were to be successfully infringed upon, shall I say, by the Orion group, what would happen to this wanderer at the harvest? Ra explains, if the wanderer entity demonstrated through action a negative orientation towards other selves, it would be, as we have said before, caught into the planetary vibration and, when harvested, possibly repeat again the master cycle of third density as a planetary entity. This shall be the last full question of this session, and of course it shall be the last question of this video. But going back to the answer that Ra says, is that, yeah, we've said this. A wanderer, just because they come from another density, another planet, they are still invested as full humans here. They are as susceptible, if not more, than other people who have been not only of this planet, but also possibly from the solar system. So the danger, let's just put it, I don't like to use the word danger, but the susceptibility for wanderers is as high as any other human. So it's very important that wanderers recall who they are, what they came here for, and start shining the way they should. So if you feel like you're a wanderer, which a lot of you, I would say, definitely are, because otherwise you wouldn't be looking into this material in this chaotic state of the world that we are. A wanderer like you then should be very aware of the possibility of just rediscovering who you are, knowing who you truly are in the sense of the purpose that you came here to accomplish. That is, and we've talked about this in previous sessions and videos, the ability to raise the vibration of this planet. Everybody needs it right now, and that's the purpose that you came here for. No matter what path you take, if you're a healer, if you're a communicator, if you are anything, creator, whatever it is, you came here with your own talents to become that unique vibration that you kind of harnessed in your planetary sphere at some point in your past incarnations, and who knows elsewhere. But all of that, you came here to bring it to planet Earth, and it's much needed right now. So without getting too deep into this, I just wish you, even if you're not a wanderer, to rediscover who you are, because in our core, we are all one with Infinite Creator, and we came here to have a unique experience so we can transcend into the multiplicity or infinite possibilities that we have in this universe to the creator and for the creator. So with that, I leave you. Finally, we're done with session 16. Session 17 is going to be 3 parts, and it's going to be really, really cool. We're going to talk about Jesus and other stuff that, of course, is fascinating to me. So with that, thank you again for watching. I love that you're enjoying these videos. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the love. And I'll see you next week with session 17, part 1.